Hi, my friends, and welcome to the Life Switch Show. It's a live show, so anything can happen and anything will happen. So today, my guest is Heather Katz, and we are talking about life and work balance. Now, before we start that conversation, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell to be notified of any of the new episodes and when we go live. And if you're joining on Facebook, you can follow and like my page, Adam Kabalik, Life Coach. And also, if you're joining live, you can obviously comment. That way we can interact with you during the live. All right, I'm going to roll the stinger for you guys. And when I say I'm going to roll this thing, I actually mean James. James did that. And thank you very much for that, James. So today I want to introduce my guest, Heather Katz. She's a mom of 3 kids who a few years ago decided to follow her true passion to become a health coach, yoga instructor, and a personal trainer. Heather uses natural and holistic methods to guide busy moms, women, and families towards a more balanced health. And Heather is also a lifelong athlete, a former competitive runner and triathlete who competed at a national level. And she's also someone who's overcome struggles with eating and injuries, as many athletes do. Heather is not unfamiliar to making a switch in her life herself, and all of which have taught her many things about herself, about her own inner strength, and it has truly helped her to learn to be more resilient in all areas of life. Friends, a big welcome to today's guest, Heather Katz.
Hello, Adam. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, I am very, very glad to have you on the show. We connected a couple of weeks ago, and I really liked connecting with you. We didn't really have a relationship or any prior to us actually getting on a call. We didn't really know much about each other, but I was super happy to connect with you.
Likewise, I think it was kind of one of those things that was meant to be.
Definitely. I mean, you reached out to me and we connected around health. We connected around well-being. We connected around balance, which is something that I truly, truly like to talk about. And, us discussing what the topic could be, I really thought you could come on and, share some of your wisdom, some of your experiences, and, tell us more about that journey and all of that, because I think and I believe it's a great value for what this show is all about.
Right.
So would you like to give me and anyone who's listening right now a little bit of introduction about yourself?
Absolutely. You did a wonderful job introducing me, but I can certainly add to that.
Cool.
So I am a mom of 3. That's probably my first job above everything else, as any mom or parent understands. And there's a little bit of a history prior to where I am now, because obviously, like you introduced me as, I'm a health coach, a personal trainer, and a yoga instructor, but I haven't always been these things. So if we go back, 25 plus years, I'm going to age myself if I say too much. I was an elementary school teacher and, loved working with kids. I've always worked with kids. And incidentally, I do teach kids yoga right now too. But I just was an athlete. So on the side, that's what I did. It was my fun time, my free time. And I became a competitive runner in high school. And that was after spending many years growing up in a household where we were very active. My dad is a retired doctor. My mom's a retired nurse. So we were always hiking, biking, swimming, backpacking, skiing. That's probably my dad's greatest passion, is skiing. So I just grew up immersed in that lifestyle. And in addition to that, given that they had a medical background, we had an organic garden. We grew up eating healthy and knowing how to, eat to be balanced and well. Now, of course, I was a typical kid, just like anyone else, and you have ups and downs with all of that. But when I became a competitive runner in high school, I really honed in on, my nutrition, what I needed to do, and, learned more, got better at what I needed to do to be an athlete. And that continued as I moved forward. there are bumps in the road, and I think that that's true for any person in life. So anytime you have a transition, be it a life switch, be it a milestone such as graduating from high school, going to college, getting married, having kids, each of those milestones presents you with new opportunities of growth and also opportunities to realize, hey, wait a sec, that's not working so well. So I had a few of those in my journey. It was after college. I did compete as a runner for 2 years in college, and then social life took over, and I just, again, it was on the background. It was what I always did. It was my free time, my mind clearing time, my get outside in the fresh air time. I happened to go to college in Colorado, so we did a lot of mountain biking, and anything in the mountains was what we did. At the end of college, I have a friend who welcomed me to join him to go do a triathlon out in California. Neither of us had to take our last class. We had completed all of our credits, and he said, let's go do this. And he borrowed a bike for me, taught me how to swim in the pool with the help from his sister. And so then that brought me into the life of triathlon. And so this is kind of how I became that lifelong athlete. I went from being a competitive runner to a triathlete. I competed in triathlon for, I'm going to say, about 3.5, 4 years. And it was pretty exciting because, life happens. So I went from living in Colorado to the West Coast where I grew up, all the way back to the East Coast where I moved to be with my now husband. He was then just a boyfriend at that time. But I was fortunate enough to get onto the triathlon circuit and become involved in the races and competed well. When you're in your 20s, I think you can do anything, right? So I competed very well, and I was able to go to a national competition, and all the while learned a whole lot about myself and became a very small fish in a big sea. But I love those years of being that serious athlete. But all good things must come to an end, I guess. So after those years of being a triathlete, I then transitioned into graduate school and got my teaching degree. I knew that I wanted to work with kids, became a teacher, and did so for about 4 years before another life transition. So I can keep going, or, I don't know if you have any questions.
I've got so many questions.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I actually do want to hear more about your story, because that's one of the things that I picked up about you as well as I said in the introduction. From what I could see from your personal story is that you've gone through a lot of those switches, those transformations. And I always find that fascinating, how we can almost reinvent ourselves over and over again. And I think in my introduction, I put in the word resilience in there. I don't think I actually picked that up from you, but it's something that I truly believe in. That, and you see this in studies of happiness, for example. A lot of times resilience is a super important skill. It's not so much about other traits or other skills that you need, like, how to say that, like, we can be good at so many things, but if you lack the skill of resilience, bouncing back after a defeat or a hardship of some sort, right. If you lack the skill of resilience, life just feels heavier. It's harder for yourself to get back. And that's what I've seen, from the pieces that I've understood about you, that, and you might not be aware of it yourself, but I've seen resilience being the constant, theme throughout all of that. Is that something you would agree with, or?
Yeah, I think I would. And the only reason I never associated myself with resilience is because I'm the eternal optimist. And so if we have life challenges that come our way, be it in my case, the injuries, the eating disorder, that were just bumps in the road. I never saw them as, chips on my shoulder, terrible events. They were something that I truly could learn from and grow from, and enabled me to, be a better friend to someone, to be a better mom to my kids, to be a better coach or trainer to the clients that I work with, because I have those moments of, I don't know if you want to call them weakness, but moments when, things weren't quite in balance. We're talking about balance. So things weren't quite in balance. And so if you're not in balance, then something gives. And, it could be, the knee, or it could be, the not focusing enough on taking care of yourself. And you do have to have resilience to come back from them. But I think, again, I kind of go back to the fact that I was pretty young when these things happened. Not all the injuries, that just continues to happen if you continue to be active. But especially with the eating disorder, I was young enough that I never looked at it as a negative. I just looked at it as, all right, well, this is just another step in the way. And, we take that on and we move on to the next. And if you think about, now I've thought a lot about transitions since our first conversation and in preparing for the show. And the most monumental transformations for me have been once all that was done, once I became a mother, becoming, finding a career, finding a life partner, finding a career, moving to a new location, and then becoming pregnant with your first child, having that first child, and so on and so forth. You had a second child and a third child. Like, those are the most monumental transformations that I've had in my life.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for sharing that and pointing that out, because I can see how that is a big transition or a transformation. I mean, so I kind of want to dive into this conversation about balance. You brought it up again, and it's also kind of one of the themes that I wanted to dive into during this conversation. Now, what would you say balance is for you, in your own words?
That's a good question. I think what I've realized, especially over the years, because we all are busy, no matter what we have on our plate. But when you have children that you're caring for, in my case, I'm supporting my husband. He has a full-time career. He's a college professor, which is what's wonderful. That's why we're in the middle of Maine, in rural Maine, because he found his dream job. We all have a lot on our plate. And I think that the notion of balance is almost a misnomer, in that, well, you can't have it all. It's really almost a farce. And here I am, my business is called Balance Wellness Within, and I'm telling you, it really is a farce to be balanced. But what I mean by that is that we have to find our homeostasis. What is most important for us to balance, to feel balanced? Now, what I need in my life, or want in my life, or would ideally put into, my 7 days a week, is going to be very different from what you would, and from my best friend would, and from what my sister would, and anyone else. We all are very different in what we need. But when I approach clients or friends or family members who might want to look at how to improve the balance in their lives, I always go back to the whole issue. I call it an issue, but the whole fact that we need to pick and choose what is in the forefront. What are our non-negotiable priorities? What are those things that you want on the forefront of your life? And how are you going to, move the pawns on the chessboard to make that all work for you? Because we can't have it all. We can't do it all. We can't be it all. There just aren't enough hours in the day. So that's where I'd start with balance.
I love it. Well, thank you very much, Heather. Honestly, I'm so glad that you're saying that, because I think that we could have easily started talking about, how you would have different strategies or this and that, and how you whatever. And you coming out and saying you can't have it all. I just think it is kind of a fresh, how do you say that? A breath of fresh air.
Yes.
In a way, because it addresses this myth of work-life balance, or balance in general. What you said about you can't have it all, I can't remember if I've referenced this before on one of the previous episodes. There is a great book, and you might have heard of it or maybe read it yourself, The Essentialist or Essentialism by Greg McKeown.
I've heard of it, yes.
Yeah. So there is, I'm not gonna tell the ruin the book, but there is, I think, an underrated part of that book is one chapter. Greg, the author, he goes through what he calls the 3 essentialist truths that you must replace all other truths with. Now, I think this is the essence of the book. For some reason, I've read it twice, because I always do that if I find a book good enough. I've read it twice, and I have to say, I can't seem to understand why he didn't focus more on those truths, because I think those are the fundamental to everything. So now I've built up to it. So I'm gonna tell people what it is. The 3 essentialism truths that you kind of need to adopt are: the first one is there's always a choice. The second one is only few things matter. And the third and final one is you can do anything, not everything. And the way I usually do this is I work backwards. So once I've presented this, I go, so if you can't do everything, you need to choose what that anything will be. And because you know not all things matter, only few things matter, let's figure that out, what those things are. And then using choice, choosing to focus. Because honestly, as you say, one thing from my background in the corporate industry, corporate world, we use priorities in plural, right? But that is a very tricky balance to strike, because if many things are important, maybe nothing is really important. Now, again, obviously, you can have X amount of priorities, but it's just when it becomes a list of 25 items, maybe you're not prioritizing hard enough. It's with the choice. And I say sometimes, if it doesn't hurt when you're making the priority, you're not prioritizing hard enough. Well, I wanted to share that whole thing about, how you can do anything, not everything, because I really think that fits into what you were sharing around balance. What are your thoughts on? Yeah.
That sounds like a book I need to pick up. I love the way it's distilled down, and I always, when I read books, or when I instead of reading, which fits into my life better, I think, what can you really can you use going forward? Way to think it. And I think very true. When I work with clients, one of the key things is to start with the basics, start with their priorities, start with their goals, start with where they are now and where they want to be. And you're right. Every client could have a list of at least 10 to 15 things, if not more. But how can we take that on now, it depends on the client, but, in even 3 months? I don't know that we can take on those many things. We are human, and we can only make so many changes at once. But if you break them down to, okay, what's A number 1? What do we need to do before we move on to steps 2, 3, 4, and 5? What is the A number 1 priority? And we start small. We keep it simple and really break it into those steps, because we can't make too many habits at once. We can't make too many changes at once. Otherwise, nothing lasts.
I like that. That's a good point. Is it important to start small?
I really think it is, especially in the area of your health and wellness and fitness. Maybe fitness, especially if you're not somebody who grew up like I did. I realize I might be an anomaly in terms of the environment I grew up in. But if you're coming to fitness to say you're a mom who has had kids, and you've been engrossed in their lives, and you've put yourself on the year of your career, and now are we still?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So let's see if it catches up.
Running, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Here we go. Yeah, so I think the last thing I heard you say was
live shows, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's live. You said something about if you put yourself on the back burner. Was that perhaps what you were saying?
Yes. So, if you put yourself on the back burner, and you don't have to be a mom, you can be anyone, you can be, like you said, somebody working in corporate, somebody who's the primary breadwinner, you put yourself on the back burner, and then your life slows down. You can finally take a breath, you can exhale, and you look at yourself, and you need to make some changes for your health. Maybe you had a diagnosis that caused you to want to make changes. Maybe you have a vacation coming up. Any one of those things that might trigger you to want to do something different is going to be an important place to start. But we're talking about changing years of patterns and habits and routines. So if I come in here and I said, Adam, here we've got 1 through 10 here. I want you to do this on Monday and this on Tuesday. I mean, you're going to be done hightailing it out of there and not want to see me again as a coach, because that's too much. So I think that that's really the best place to start, is to keep it simple. And for instance, with my clients, I try to pick, these days I tend to be personal training more than I am health coaching. That's just kind of how things have been. I'm not really sure why, but that's how they are. And, we pick 1 or 2 things. In addition to training with me, here are 2 things I want you to go home and do this week. Let's check in next week and see how they're going. So that tends to be my approach in keeping it simple.
I think you're onto something there, because as you say, when you try to change something, I think it's conditioning, old programming. There's a lot of old patterns that needs to be retrained, and from what the understanding I have about the human mind, of the brain, is that it's going to fight you on that, and a lot of times because it's a creature of habit. It's so used to one certain thing. So if you start introducing something else, I mean, the novelty of something new will feel so much exciting. So you're just going to do it for its own sake for a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks. It's when the novelty wears off that you're going to have to rely on routine or habits versus willpower.
Exactly. Well, and tapping into that, I mean, that's such an individual thing, as to how do you tap into that to, help people, work through those ingrained habits that they have that may or may not be serving them, and, get past what our habitual brains want to do. It's an object in motion remains in motion. We're like that. That's how humans are. And that was, from an evolutionary standpoint, very helpful, because, if you didn't get the water today because you were too tired, then you wouldn't be drinking. So it all makes perfect sense. But, we live in a modern society, so we need to, instead of walking down to the stream to get our exercise 3 times a day, we have to incorporate that in, and we have to make those habits and bring in those routines. But one thing you said that I wanted to just talk about briefly is the notion of, there might be something standing in the way, be it in our brain or in how our brain functions. And I know that in the introduction that you gave of me, and also in some of what you posted on, in social media, was that I approach working with my clients from a holistic and natural perspective. And I thought that was worth mentioning right now, because that's something that is so important. I can't come to a personal training session with someone without first getting a little bit of the backstory on who they are. I can't do that without first sitting down with them and saying, well, how's your sleep? What are your eating habits like? I mean, obviously, if I'm health coaching, we talk about the eating habits. What's your stress level like? Are you happy on a day-to-day basis? And so, I give them a pre-questionnaire, of course, to get, to cover these things. But we start by talking about them as a whole person, because that's really the way I think it needs to be approached. They need to know that I see them, I see all of them, and not just, the arms that might need some strengthening and the squat form that might need correcting. So we approach it from that perspective at the very beginning. And then as we go along, if somebody needs a little bit of support here and there, I have other modalities that I might bring in. A lot of times people just love how they feel. I mean, they love how they feel if they drink more water. I mean, talk about keeping simple. I saw a comment pop up about, keeping it simple. If you drink 3 more glasses of water a day, how is that going to make you feel? I mean, maybe the fatigue goes away, maybe the headaches go away, who knows? So really just, with something that small can make such a shift for people. And then what I find and I know that you have experience in your own life with your health journey, then it waterfalls, so you add the water, then you add, 2 to 3 more fruits and veggies a day. And then they start feeling better and they realize, hey, they connect the dots and they start doing more, repeating those things that work and that make them feel better. And it becomes easier, the trickle of 3 glasses a day, and the trickle of a couple fruits and veggies then becomes a stream. And then, in 2-3 months, we've got, somebody who has fully embraced some major changes in their lives.
Absolutely. And as you said, we had a comment from Annika saying, keep it simple, such a powerful concept. And also Annika is checking in from Sweden, which is always nice when we have people from everywhere joining the live. Do you ever find it challenging with starting small? And let me give you some context to that question. I started health coaching before I got into the kind of life and business coaching that I'm doing now. And I often came across people feeling like, they made the decision, like, right, I'm ready to lose weight. I'm ready to do this. Let's do it. All or nothing. Adam, I'm a kind of like in or out kind of that thing. And I would have a very much similar approach to what you're describing, very holistic, very like, let's start small, let's build a sustainable shift and change. And people would find that challenging, almost like boring. So my question then is, like, do you ever come across this or come up against this pushback or boredom or resistance to starting small?
That's interesting. I have to admit that I haven't with clients. And I think the reason for that, and we're very fortunate for that, is, I'm working a lot with clients one-on-one right now in person. In Maine, we've been very fortunate in the pandemic to have the ability, we're fully masked and social distancing and all the good stuff, but we've been fortunate enough to stay in that face-to-face environment. And I think we have 2 things going on. People are craving that. They want to be with people and that interaction. And also there's so much that we can do in this wellness center. We have, a fantastic facility available to us. So it's hard to get bored. I have an awesome team who I learn from. So every time, I need to mix things up, I talk with my team and we feed off of each other and get ideas from each other. So in the personal training department, they're not bored. Now, have I talked to many of my clients, 6 months out, a year out? I'm a relatively new personal trainer, so I'm not really there at that point. But if I think to some friends and some of the people who I first started health coaching with, because of course you start with those who are in your inner circle, I know that they have hit some of those blocks. Not necessarily boredom, but I think it's more that sometimes it's challenging to focus and focus and focus and do and do and do. And it's good for you, but sometimes you just want to relax. So I think that, if we're talking about switches and transitions in people's life, so they can stick with it for the first, couple of months that they're working with you. And then they get back into the old routine. So I think that I've seen that happen to some of, it's some friends that I worked with, and that's okay. I think that we have to realize that, I think kind of back to my education and the elementary school teaching, when we teach people and teach children, everything is cyclical. So we will introduce a concept, but then you're going to revisit that concept maybe in a couple of weeks, maybe in 8 weeks, maybe in a year. Here's my kitty coming to say
we've
hello.
Got a third guest joining, of course.
She loves it. She comes on to every show, I think.
They do that.
And,
they know.
Her name is Safi, and she's very sweet. So I think that is something that I often see happen, is that, life takes over, or events take over, or the habits come back. And because of the cyclical nature of life, it's okay to, maybe let the pendulum swing one way. And then, when you come back around, you can pick up those habits again. So less boredom, more just the challenge of keeping things up.
Now, I like what you were saying right now, because from what I'm picking up from the story or what you're sharing is, you seem to have, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you seem to have an acceptance for as you say, it's okay if we feel challenged. It's okay if the pendulum swings a bit. And I kind of like that acceptance and that understanding. And you mentioned it before. I wrote it down because I liked how you framed it. Like facing hardship, how you can learn from it and grow from it. Seemed to be a mindset that you had. And I think you were talking about that when it came to even helping clients to learn from hardship and grow from hardship. And what you're talking about with the pendulum, can you talk to that a little bit about like how can you use a challenge or a relapse or something like that to learn from it and grow from it?
I think the most important thing, and we hear this said a lot, it's a bit of a phrase that I've heard a lot, is to give yourself grace. That's the way it's phrased often these days. But I think that the most important thing at any point in our lives, but if you have a life change, and it can be anything big or small. I always go back to some of my biggest life changes when you are single to married, married to with children. Those are huge transitions, and suddenly what we talked about, the plate. Your plate is full. Well, what was on that plate before? You got to push a few things off because you have to make room for the new partner, the new job, the new baby, whatever it is. And so what I found myself doing in these situations was giving myself grace. Like, okay, we need a little bit of time to readjust to this new life change. And if you go back to, say, having a baby, at least you have the 9 months up. You have the child, you've already had to adjust your life for 9 months to be pregnant, to not, okay, so you can't run anymore, you're a runner, so you have to give that up. So what do you do now? Well, you have to be careful doing sit-ups, can't do sit-ups. So it's like everything is always adjusting and you're learning new things. So then, the baby arrives and you're like, oh, wow, I can do everything again, of course, in about 6 weeks. But can you really? And I think that that's kind of an important mindset to have. Well, no, you can't really suddenly do it all. You can't really take on all of those things. You have to, take things one step at a time. When I was in those situations where it was, I don't know, you can't call that a relapse, but, there was a time that, I needed to focus more on our children. I couldn't get out and go on the runs, but what could I do? Okay, well, baby likes the front pack, so we take the child on the walk. And so my definition of exercise changed. Okay, so I can't go to the gym anymore. I worked with a personal trainer. I love working out at the gym. I can't do that anymore. All right, free weights set up at home. We got the big yoga ball, the yoga mats, and everything was at home. Believe it or not, back in the day of VHS tapes, I had Baron Baptiste on my VHS tape. But that was my freedom. That was, again, my time to, go and get that, that time for myself. But I had to relearn how to do it because I didn't have the same variables in place, and I didn't have the ability to, just run off to the gym with the kids. And I know people do, but that just wasn't my reality. So it was always with each of these life changes, with each of these, when the pendulum swings one way, well, what do we need to do to make anew what we want to have on that plate of ours? And how can we make it work? Is that an answer to your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Heather. I was thinking about that. So, I completely forgot it. There was something about. Oh yeah. I just remembered. This whole thing about. To me, what you just said is showing me that. Now, these are my words, so I'm not sure you would say this, but it was like you weren't being a victim of circumstance. You were taking some self-leadership. That's usually what I call those things, where it's like, okay, so this thing is no longer an option. What else can I do? Versus, oh no, I can't do that. Oh no, everything's broken and ruined now. And because that can happen, and it's okay. It's just not supposed to be there forever. Like, we're supposed to move on. We're supposed to come out of that and go, right, let's move into action. At least from where I'm coming from. And parts of what you shared made me go, wow, she practiced some powerful self leadership right there, because you didn't fall victim to circumstance. Am I am I onto something, or is this very far off?
It's not far off. I just, you're so complimentary. It's funny because I mean, I would say thanks to my mom who, who taught us to, you just go and you do and you go get and you make happen what you want to make happen. Now, that being said, certainly anybody can fall into being a victim of circumstance,
Yeah.
and maybe today's a good day for me, and if you talk to me in 3 days, I may not have as good of a day and may not have that response and that outlook. But I think that what really is most important in this is that we are able to notice what might be standing in our way and find a different way. I I just never thought of it ever being a negative. If I had a challenge, it was always looking for the answers, and I hope that I can be the person who supports my clients to get there, because maybe that's just the way my brain works, maybe that's just the way I was wired. And if I can be that catalyst that can help you to see that way in your life, then I'm thrilled. And that's exactly why I do what I do, so I can help you to see the change and make changes. I had, when I was, it was mainly when I had our first and second child, things were a little less busy and kids weren't as old. Our kids are a little spread out. So our youngest is 8 and our oldest is 17, going to college next year. And then we have a 13 in the middle. So they were very spread out. When the two older ones were young, it was easier to have play dates and moms groups and things. And I was often the go-to person for any health question. Moms would come to me, ask me questions. What should I do for this workout? What should I eat? How can I do this? And so I guess, maybe that's how I got into the career that I'm in now, because that was just a natural outbirth of my personality. It's naturally part of who I am. So, I mean, I thank you again for that compliment, but I want to just be that person to help people do that in their lives as best as they can.
I can see you doing that, definitely. Hang on, so we're getting a comment from Agata. Do you find that stressed people find it more difficult sticking to good habits? Like it's easier to slip to emotional eating, destructive behaviors, etc.? And I guess maybe this one is for you, Heather.
Yes, I think that's true, Agata, and that's a beautiful name, by the way. I think it is easier to let yourself slip into those types of destructive behaviors, the emotional eating. But what's interesting, and if I just would refer to the current times that we're living in the pandemic, I've seen people go both ways. And maybe that's because our lives have opened up in different ways. Maybe we aren't commuting as much. Maybe, you're working from home. And so you have more time to yourself to do things that you want to do. But I've seen people slip into the comfort foods, the sitting on the couch, that makes them feel good, because there's so much in the world right now that doesn't make us feel good. But then I've seen the opposite of, hey, wait a minute, I have so much time, and now I can do this and that and the other thing. I mean, we've seen it happen in in the entertainment industry. Of course, in the public eye, we've seen phenomenal transformations of people in their lives and their health, because they have the time and they can, like I said earlier, like exhale and say, okay, now it's time for me and I can do it. And I think that you just have to find where do you find homeostasis? Where is your comfort zone? And anytime you make changes, you're going to have to step a little bit out of that. But, if right now you're stressed and lots is going on, then go back to the basics. Go back to okay, so I can't get to the gym because the gyms are closed or because I don't feel safe there. Well, then go on a walk, or, tie up those running shoes, or, find something that you can do that keeps you in your comfort zone, but, makes you happy. It gives you that, that kind of completeness, that feeling of, oh, okay, I'm good. I'm back where I want to be. And when it comes to, destructive behaviors, that's kind of a whole different topic in and of itself, and maybe not my expertise at all. But when it comes to things like comfort eating, I think that my biggest piece of advice for anyone when it comes to eating is you just have to allow yourself to be a human and eat what you enjoy. I mean, I spent some time in Europe. Adam and I talked about this when I was 12 and 13. We lived there. My father was
Mm.
on sabbatical, and just the whole you know, the approach to eating and mealtime. I mean, they're events. It's a special time together in the evening, and it's purposefully in Germany. The dinners were 8 p.m. so you could have everything done and you could sit down and just relax and enjoy. And I think that in society now, it's not always that way. It's not a sit, relax, enjoy time. And so we look at food differently. It's unfortunate, but try for yourself to just maybe put a little mindfulness into, I like to say mindfulness in everything that you do, but if eating is an area that you're struggling in, eat mindfully, even if you only have 5 or 10 minutes to sit at your table or at your desk or wherever you're eating. And even if it's alone, just, put the phone away, put the book away, gaze out the window and see what's going on in the world, and just be mindful of, check in. How are you feeling? And, does this food even taste good? Do you like this meal? And, did you wish you had had the macaroni and cheese instead of, the turkey sandwich? And if you do want the macaroni and cheese, then by all means have that. And, then the next couple meals you get back on track. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with mac and cheese because you can make it super healthy, but that's a typical American comfort food that, of course, as a mom, our kids love. So that would be my response to that. And I think we also had a question from Andrea too. I don't know.
Yeah, it was yeah. So how do people know what they want? What if they change their minds? Can you speak to that a bit?
That's an excellent question, Andrea. I mean, if you have those answers, we'd sure love to know.
True.
I think that the best way for people to know what they want, especially in my industry, working with people in the health and wellness industry, is to really get them in touch with, kind of their core. I was going back to what makes you comfortable. What at your core do you enjoy? I have a friend who during the pandemic has you just had the situation where she's put on weight, and this has happened to others. She didn't have the case where she's able to get back into shape. It went the other way because her life is less active. And we were actually posted a live video. She watched it, she commented on it, and we had a conversation about it after that. And my comment to her was, really just allow yourself the opportunity to make the mistakes, allow yourself the opportunity to get out of your routine. But then what little thing can you do? Let's get back to the basics. Can it be that, and I tend to be a very back to basics person, keep it simple. What is it that that you like to do as a child? What was fun for you? If you don't want to go to the gym and hop in the elliptical for an hour or half an hour or 20 minutes, what did you like to do as a kid? And can you do that as an adult? Some semblance of that as an adult. Because if fitness is play for us, I mean, we still need that as adults. And if eating is, a fun activity where you switch off planning meals with your partner, or you have the kids plan, 3 meals out of the week and you get to plan the other 2 with your partner. I mean, that to me is like, it makes it fun, and it takes the drudgery out of it and the work out of it. And, it makes it so that you can enjoy it again. And then what if they change their mind? I mean, I think that's the beauty that we were talking about earlier, is that, we are humans and we have that choice. So if you, are on a health pathway and you change your mind and you really decide it's not for you, then that's your choice. And, so where does that get you in the end? That ultimately is something you're going to have to assess on your own. But I think that people like Adam and I, be it as a life coach or a health coach, we can help you to shine the light on what might be your highest priorities, your highest goals, you're in your best interests or in your best good, but we can't make that choice like you can. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you, Heather. I think that was a great answer. And thank you, Agata. Thank you, Andrea, for asking the questions. I really I enjoy the fact that we get to have people watching live and asking us questions while we're having this powerful conversation. I think it's an honor to be in that position. There is something I wanted to ask you, Heather, and it's maybe a really tricky question, but you've mentioned it, and I think it's coming through in almost any and all of your answers. You said it yourself, you're an optimist, or at least you consider yourself an optimist. Is that something you've always been? Or is it something you've trained yourself to become?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that ultimately I've always been an optimist. I mean, I was a happy kid. I had a wonderful upbringing, parents who were always there for me, and we had fun. We did fun things. Like I mentioned, I grew up in Oregon, and life was fun and life was good. And I think that the reality is, though, as life goes on and the switches in our life, the transformations, the milestones, whatever comes our way, there might be dips in that optimism, or the positivity that you feel, and it's something that I think, if when being honest, you do have to cultivate.
Mm.
And the way that I do that, of course, as a runner, you get out and those endorphins, they'll make everything, feel wonderful. And I think exercise in general is a wonderful, just mental health habit for anyone. And it doesn't have to be a run. It can be anything that you enjoy. I'm a huge nature lover, and outside time gives me that mind clearing time, that, just that calmness of the beauty, and of the nothingness. We live in Maine, and we happen to be right near lakes. And right now, for those of you who, I think in Sweden, I'm sure you experience this, but not in the Canary Islands, the lakes are frozen. So I can go out there, depending on the day. It can be ice skates, it can be skate skis, it can be cross country skis, and I can just go out there and escape. So it's this wonderful, just breath of fresh air, literally, and it gives me that opportunity. But optimism is something that I do have to cultivate in other ways too. So, I do work on my mindset. I incorporate energy medicine and aromatherapy and things that have worked for me in my life that I have continued. They help me to overcome some of the struggles that I had, and they really are, relevant on a daily basis for my life. And like I mentioned before, they're sometimes they're beneficial and relevant for clients too. So it's I guess I'm lucky that I was born this way, but I'm fully human and will admit that there are times that I have to cultivate those things in myself.
I thank you for saying that. Again, I like the fact that you're saying, it's something that you can cultivate. Admitting that it's not always optimistic, and B, the fact that it is something you can cultivate, because it also, to me, it speaks to the hope of doing that. And it actually reminds me of, there was a study, or several studies done on this, where they can train optimism. And one of the ways, if I don't quote me on this one, but I think the way they did this was by looking at images of people smiling or being, neutral, smiling, and upset. And what they did was it happened in a very rapid period of time, and they had to so they were shown maybe 12 images of a couple of smiling people, and they had to point out the smiling people. So because you train your mind to look for the smiling people, you started to rewire your brain in a certain way, that you started looking for, optimism. And so that's just part of the study, the way I remember it. But I like the fact that, Heather, you're talking to the fact that you can, you can cultivate it, and B, things doesn't always go the way we want them to. We're humans, so that's fine. But I like the fact that, looking back on your own experience, it's something that you nurture it.
Indeed. Well, and isn't there a saying, what you focus on grows? And
Yeah.
that's true. Literally, if I'm a gardener, I love my garden, and if you focus on that garden and you're out there every day doing a little weeding, a little watering, it's going to grow. And I think that's true for positivity, and I think that's true for anything in the health sphere and arena. I think that's true for personal development. If you focus on it, how could it not start to benefit you? And
Yeah.
make that trickle down into your life. It would be impossible for it not to.
Yeah. There is a quote. I can't remember who said this, but it's from a. I don't think it's from a book, but I read it in a book, of course. And it was such a powerful one that I actually put it up in. Me and my partner, we used to run a restaurant in Cambodia, Southeast Asia, and in that restaurant, I put it up on a sign. I made this handmade, hand painted sign, and it said, "See the good things in life." And I love that quote because it kind of speaks to the fact that you can see anything. You can see the bad stuff. You can see the good stuff. You make the conscious decision. And again, this goes back to essentialism, where the number one is choice. You have a choice. You make this conscious decision to see the good things in life because both things happen, I'm sure. Bad things, good things. Both things happen at the same time. What you focus on will grow. What you choose to see will kind of, be put in the forefront of how things are going. And the funny thing is, we had this sign hanging in our cafe, and our cafe was very popular with expats, people moving out of Europe and living their final days in Southeast Asia. And we had a really grumpy German man living quite like next door. And he was really odd, very, very odd, and not very friendly. And, sometimes he would come into the cafe having something to eat, something to drink. But the really weird thing is when we put up the sign, he started coming in every morning in his robe, his, like, what do you call that? Like just his, just a bathroom robe or whatever. He just walked down this alley where we were located in his slippers and his robe. And he would stand in front of that sign. It was a small one hanging. He would stand there just looking at that. And one morning I just had to ask him. So I was like, sorry, but what's going on? And he said, you know what? I found that coming down here every day, looking at this sign, just starts my day in much better ways. And I was like, wow, I love that. Because this guy, here it is, there is this sign, there is this message, see the good things in life. And it kind of made me go, I get it why he's grumpy. It's probably, there's something going on. And if he can come down in his robe, straight out of bed, have a look at that sign, I'd be happy to. Like, I thought it was such a beautiful thing because that guy kind of realized I can see there are bad things happening. There are bad things in my life, but there are also good things. And I choose to see the good ones.
What a neat impact that you could make with just a sign.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, we've got a question. We've got a question from Annika. So Annika is saying, it's frustrating just because you grow... It's frustrating just because you grow up. Certain things have to be experienced. So, okay, yeah. Some things just seems to be so hard. Why is that? Stress, diet, work, life, etc. What do you think is the biggest reason why we bother about it? Why we bother about it for us? Okay, so I guess, let's see. Growing up, certain things seems to be hard. What do you have to say to that, Heather, based on the question?
Right, and I think she's also saying that growing up, it's true. I think when we're younger, things are simpler, and then then we have to become adults, and everything is harder and is more intense. I mean, just from what I know about child development, I think that what happens in a child's brain is they are building those synapses like crazy. And, they're going to focus in on things that are interesting to them, that are exciting, that are going to build that brain. And now this isn't, of course, true in every single situation, because if a child grows up in hardship, then they're going to have fewer of those opportunities to look for. But I think that, children are naturally wired for happiness. They're naturally wired for good, to do good, feel good, be good, and seek those fun things because their brains are still developing, like the frontal lobe is still developing. That's why you'll see a 2-year-old and, they'll jump off the 3rd, 4th step onto the hard floor, fall, get up and laugh. They don't mind. They don't care. They don't think about it because they haven't developed that fear yet. So I think that unfortunately we as adults, our brains are fully developed, which happens from what I understand at age 25. And the reason I know this and I'm like crossing my fingers is because we have an almost 18-year-old son. So, I'm waiting for him to get closer to that time. But anyway, so when our brains are more developed, we see the big picture, we see it all. And you'll even see that, I've seen that in my son. He's 8 now, and he said he had a fear of heights. He didn't have that at 6 or 7, so we just, our brains process things differently. And now that we're adults and we can see the big picture, then we realize the magnanimity of everything. It's the mom when the child's on the 4th step saying, "Johnny, don't jump," because they don't want the child to get hurt, because they know, the bruised knees, the bonked heads, whatever it is. We see the big picture and the kids don't. And I guess that maybe that's why I suggested that we get back to the getting in touch with what made us happy as a child, and what maybe brought us that, that feeling of comfort and goodness, and what brought us that feeling of balance as a child, or whatever it is. Go look for those things, because like we talked about with the positivity, you can cultivate that just like you can cultivate anything else. Because like Adam said, it is a choice. We have a choice to make, and it's not always easy. That's not to say that, it's all cupcakes, sprinkles, and unicorns, because it's not. It's a process, and it's kind of one of those things. I think it was Zig Ziglar who said, you have to. Why do we shower every day? Because we get dirty again. So it's the same thing. You have to. Why do you wake up and read the sign every morning? Because we need to refresh our mindset again and get back to where, we need to be going into the day. And if you can start with something like that, that will bring you to that, that point of, a good starting spot, and back to who you were as a child, and back to, kind of the basics of, the essence of you, and, try to brush away some of those troubles. Then hopefully that's a good way to approach it.
I'm so glad that you were on when Annika posed this question because of your background with children as well. I think it was a brilliant answer. So kind of to recap, because I now understood Annika's question, why do we complicate things when we grow up? Right? That's the thing. And I think, Heather, you gave a great answer to that. As a child, we don't see the complexity of things. Everything's new, everything's exciting, everything's fun. And as we grow older, we put pieces together, we start seeing the bigger picture. And from that, it's easier to get caught up in it, I guess. And at the same time, as you said, again, I love that, how, well, you can bring clues from your childhood. So what you enjoyed as a child, maybe reconnecting with that. Although maybe not, maybe it's not the sandbox, or maybe it's not climbing the tree, or maybe it is, who knows, right? But what about that experience had you lit up, right? And try to reconnecting to that, because, something that's popping up in my head is it's, don't be so serious. And I kind of want to go into that, but I know that's another hour to talk about that. But to me, that's been the thing for me. I made my adulthood quite complicated because I made it so, and then I started realizing, oh, I'm making that up. I'm making that up, and part of that was actually, as you said, Heather, I reconnected with the child, or the excitement. One of them being running, and to me, hang on, I'm just going to read Andrea's comment. I find it easy when we follow what feels good. Exactly. What feels good on a true level. That's kind of what I'm understanding as well. Because when I started running, I say this sometimes, running saved my life twice. The first time was when I started losing weight, because I was like 120 kilos. So what is that? 240 pounds, I think, about-ish. So quite a bit. And I, so the first time I started losing that weight, which was a great thing. And then I got bored doing the thing, because what I did, I ran on asphalt. I tracked everything. I was like an astronaut, just to get out on a run. I had to be synced up and linked up and dressed, and I don't know, all the kinds of stuff I was wearing. And then the second time running saved my life was after I picked up the book Born to Run by Chris McDougall, the author. And I read it and I just like, hang on, can you have fun running? Can running be fun? I didn't know that. Nobody told me that. And all of a sudden I started running. And I started dressing down, using less gadgets and less metrics and stuff like that. I tried to be as close to nature as I could because I realized that's how I grew up. I climbed trees. I built, how do you say that? Like tree houses, and we played in caves, and we had wooden swords, and I wanted to get back to that. And once I did, it just opened everything else up for me. That's when I started to realize, oh, hang on, if you can have fun running, can you have fun working? Well, that's an interesting one. And it ended up, I quit my job, started my own business, started doing what I love because, hey, you can have fun while working.
Saved your life twice. That's fantastic. Yeah, you need to do a show on that, I think, Adam. And I'm glad that both Agata and Andrea, I'm not sure how she pronounces it, really appreciate your comments. You're welcome. We're happy to provide insight into things and also just shed light on the journey as it is. This is your life switch show, and we have switches that come into our lives at various times, but it's still a journey and it's still a process. And we can seem like we've got it all together, but it's something that we all are focusing on every day. I think those of us who really are trying to build a life that we're interested in. I missed that last comment there.
Yeah, I think we can bring it up again. Obviously, we're hitting a very popular theme here because now the comments are really lighting up. So that's Annika is saying, as an adult, we also know that life is trying us, that everything is not always black or white, but still we make it so difficult and paint the worst picture we can. We're crazy, Annika says. And I think, in a way, a lot of times, I often say, to me, life doesn't actually happen to us. It's happening for us. And what I mean by that is life is not an outside-in event. It's an inside-out event. It's perspective. So really, it can seem like life's happening on the outside and affecting you, but a lot of times it's actually you making things mean certain things, and that's what's giving you the experience of life. And kind of what Annika shared is that's what made me think of that. Like, we make those pictures. We paint the worst picture. I'm not saying always and everyone. I'm just saying, like, sometimes we can dig our own hole so deep. And it's just me doing it.
I think it's somewhat human nature. I really do. Yeah. I think that it's just a little bit how our brains work. Unfortunately, we've got the remnants of reptilian brains. And like I said, we survive because of these brains. But knowing that we can challenge those thoughts. And, probably my biggest thing is also, who do you surround yourself with? And how do they impact what you're doing? I mean, you can put up all the signs in the world. And if, you're surrounded by people who aren't going to sustain those thoughts in your mind, well, then you've got to go on lots of runs to get your mind back in place, or you find yourself a different group of people, or even if it's one other person who kind of shares your thoughts that can, pull you into that mindset more. That to me is, that's sometimes enough and can be very powerful.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. So Heather, before we came on, I actually asked you, so I'm going to ask you one last question, right? I do not want to put you on the spot here, but I kind of want to change the question. So let's see. Let's not, freak you out too much. So for the final question, I want to ask you, say that you got the biggest mic out there, the microphone, and you've got 15 minutes where you can just speak to the whole world and everybody's listening. What would be the message or the thing that you would share with the world for those 15 minutes? Something that you would like them to know or understand?
Wow.
I did put you on the spot.
You did. Well, and it's my problem is it's only 15 minutes.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
I guess there's beauty in keeping it short and to the
Hmm.
point because what's the average attention span? Well, I think that the answer to that question is, I guess it depends which hat I'm wearing. Am I wearing,
Hmm.
the hat of, the health coach and the personal trainer and, the yoga instructor, or am I wearing the hat as, as a friend and a mom? Or am I wearing the hat that, is a mentor to the kids that I work with, or the kids that come into my house with my teenage kids? Those kids become, a part of my world and a part of my circle, and they get to hear, the mini mom TED Talks every now and then. I think that I would focus a little bit on what I would have answered to your original question, which is, advice I would give to myself at age 15, because it really applies to the theme of your show and a lot of what we've talked about today too. And I think what I would talk about would be along the lines of course, the keeping it simple and giving yourself, this time and the space to do and be and accept and become without too many limitations. And that goes to the advice that I would give myself as a 15-year-old. And that would be to, really just relax and enjoy things a little bit more. I was a perfectionist. I was a runner. You talk about, dressing to go out like an astronaut. I was not that, but I was like, I timed the runs. I knew how long they would be. I knew my pace. I knew all that stuff, and it was serious business. School was serious business. I was an excellent student. All of that. But I think that I wish that I had just stepped back and kept it a little more simple and relaxed and enjoyed things a little bit more because I was so focused and so intense on the things I loved and that were my major goals. I think that I didn't relax and enjoy as much as I should have. And, and that's okay because, hindsight's 2020. And I mean, I don't live with any regrets at all, but I'm thankful that, come halfway through college, I kind of realized like, all right, we can let that part of my life go, give up the serious athleticism, really just have fun and be with people and do what I want. And I think that would be my biggest piece of advice to anyone, no matter what age they are, is just to let go a little bit more and relax and enjoy and find what gets you going, find, what makes you happy and do more of that. And that's just the way that is also going to help you get back to the balance that we started talking about.
Yeah.
Get back to focusing on those priorities, get back to making those choices that you brought up. And really, if you do all of those things, then a little bit like the waterfall of, of the health related challenges that you might have or goals you might have, they might start coming in to be part of your life because you're relaxing and you're enjoying more and you're realizing, well, I would probably enjoy this more if I felt more like this, and so on. So I'm hoping that would be a trickle down that would come from that enjoyment.
Wonderful. Absolutely perfect.
Well, we did have a couple of comments, and they popped up quickly. So, but I want to say thank you to the guests. And that's awesome. That's a great comment, Annika. Yes, respect and strength, of course. But I really love the message that Andrea had, just to love and love more. That's the message behind Adam. So it's a great message. But thanks for the comments. They really are fun.
It is, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Heather, and especially thanks to this final thing, your final answer. I think that was a really, really powerful one. To keep it simple. I think that's been a really, a theme for this conversation, and also how you said about relax and enjoy it. I think that is important, and for me it goes hand in hand with what I've gotten to know about you with the holistic approach and this wholesomeness of what you do, and you really managed to communicate that today, I think. So,
I'm so glad.
Thank you very much for being on the show. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time. If you ever want to come back, I'd be more than happy to continue this conversation. And thank you for everyone who's joined this live show today. We've gotten some really, really great comments, and I'm super happy that we had Heather on who could answer these questions today, because they were good, really good questions.
I'm so glad that I could be on the show. It was a lot of fun, and I think you create in your mind what this type of interview is going to be like, and this went beyond all of my expectations. It was just a really wonderful conversation, and you have a fantastic audience, and it was my pleasure sharing any insight and suggestions and thoughts that might benefit your audience and anyone who is listening. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So Heather, before you leave, I know that we've rolled some of your like contact details and stuff on the screen at the bottom before. Besides, your Instagram, besides your website, is there anything else? If people wanted to reach out to you, what's the primary and best way to get in touch with you?
Those are excellent ways to get in touch with me. And I actually just put together a new free gift. Of course, you can reach out to me via email, direct message, but sometimes you might just want to see a little bit of what I have for you. And I put together a 5-day healthy habit jumpstart guide. And it's really just my thoughts about how to start to take on some of those goals that you might want to be taking on in the health arena. And it is a great way to distill them down, keep it simple, help you get started. And then if you want more support beyond that, I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I also have a Facebook group that my Facebook page is linked to. So there's lots of ways to get in touch with me, but by all means, don't be shy. I love interacting with people, as I hope is relatively obvious, and just sharing whatever knowledge and support that I can give to anyone who's interested in getting in touch. I would love to connect with you, and I appreciate the opportunity, Adam. It's been nothing but a pleasure.
That's fantastic. And the 5-day guide, where can they get their hands on that?
That's right on my website. So you'll get a little pop-up window and it'll come right to you in your email. So yeah,
fantastic.
But if for some reason you don't see it there, just send me an email or send me a message in any of the aforementioned social media places that we all go.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Heather, again for joining. And I do hope that people take the opportunity to connect with you because, I found this conversation super valuable. And, that guide, I'm probably going to go to your website right after this and sign up. I would love to have that guide. And people, if you enjoy this, you should really connect with Heather. I think it's just a fantastic person to have in your circle. All right, Heather, thank you very much for joining. I'll be talking to you soon, yeah? Bye. All right, my friends, I am super glad that you joined live. And if you're catching the replay, I'm equally grateful for the fact that you're watching this. And if you watched all the way till this ending, I'm sure that you found this valuable. There were some really powerful questions today, and I'm happy, so happy that Heather was joining this show today and could really give a proper, good, grounded, down-to-earth reply to them. So thanks for watching today. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell so that you get notified every time we go live or there's a new episode put out. If you're on Facebook, you can always go to my page, Adam Kowalik Life Coach, and you can like that one and be in the loop for whatever's going on. So next week we are talking to James, my guy who's running this behind the scenes. So for anyone who's interested in, it's going to be actually, I don't really know what we're going to be talking about, which is very, very exciting. It's going to be about life. It's going to be about moving, probably from England to Tenerife. It's going to be about rugby. I wouldn't be surprised. It's going to be a lot of fun stuff. Plus, James and Agatha, they're running this show with Cruise Creative Agency. They're helping me make this happen. So I am super grateful for having James on to share him with the world, with you guys. All right, next week, 6 p.m. London time on Wednesday. See you then.